Africa and the globe at large. We are here to bring you the stories, detailed discussions, and also an analysis of these different stories that have made these headlines. I'm Rita Bakunzi together with our resident analyst, Dr. Semalo Luchauskek, to bring you these discussions. It's Tuesday, the 3rd of March, and we are here to serve you. Good morning, Doctor.
Good morning, Jim.
Yes, Doctor, I hope it's indeed a new day for you today. You know, we are doing new days. I hope it's indeed a new day.
Yeah, it is.
You're
Yes.
feeling good? Yeah, I'm okay. Yeah, it's really a fine day for me as well. So we shall head right into our stories, and the first one we shall begin with the financial year of 2026-2027 in Uganda. The Finance Ministry in Uganda made a post on X saying that that the budget has increased, or the budget for the financial year of 2026-2027 has increased by 12.7% from what had been earlier estimated as to be 69.4. It has increased to 70. It has increased to 78. It has increased by 12.7. So it has increased by a total of 8.8 trillion Ugandan shillings. With what they did not indicate what the major reason was for this increase on the post on X, which was formerly known as Twitter. But then they said it's the major point of this increase. It's to fully is for infrastructure development, to majorly develop the East African crude oil, the line, that the EACOP. So to majorly construct that, and then also he added more money. They said more money is going to be put into planning programs. This is at different levels, majorly at local government levels as well. So we have this kind of increase. The financial year, or the budget, is actually increasing by a big amount. That is a big, but 8.8 trillion. So, Doctor, with this kind of immediate increase, with this kind of huge increase by 8.8 trillion, how is this going to affect Ugandans, and how is it going to be implemented? Where does this, okay, because the major reason, of course, for this increase is to develop infrastructure, to build Uganda, and the more reasons that help Uganda, you know, become a stable economy. But then how is this going to leave the Ugandans? Where is this money going to be generated from?
Yeah, they've always said that our our domestic revenue accounts for almost 60% of, you know, how the national budget, and probably that's what they're looking at. You'll be in a position to realize that there are so many forms of new taxes that the government has been in a position to come up with at various levels, and this is probably one of the things that they've been in position to capitalize on. But definitely it's so much a pointer on the kind of taxation, because if you've been in position to have what you call domestic policies account for almost 60% of your GDP, it's not a common thing, most especially in most of the African countries. The reality of the matter is questionable as well, but at the end of the day, if you have 60% that is so much dealt with, I mean, if you can be in position to access that from your domestic revenue, I mean, realistically, that's something that is a little bit very good. However much doesn't show the best or the highest point of it, but some good point that points into a good direction. Yeah,
so the major point of this, they've said they want to develop, to focus on this development of the African crude oil pipeline. We talked about this pipeline some time back. So how beneficial is this pipeline? Do we see our income, all this kind of investment, do we see it actually producing and coming out?
Yeah, the pipeline is worth an investment of around between $5 and $6 billion, if I'm not forgetting. And remember, Uganda is so much developing this with a business. I mean, the business was given to a company that's from UAE. It was given to a UAE company that's supposed to have it developed. I think it should be ready by 2031. If I'm not so much updated, viewers will forgive me. But of course, at the end of the day, if you look at this kind of investment, it's a beautiful one. It's a beautiful one. It has a lot of potential. It can be in a position to steer Uganda into a very, very powerful trajectory in a way of ensuring that at least our domestic issues are dealt with at that very angle. But of course, you don't have to forget the so many costs it comes up with at different areas. So if you're in a position to capitalize on the crude oil, and the East African crude oil pipeline, which is so much moving towards Tanzania and all that, and you use it, I mean, it's all about Appropriation of funds is some other question, but of course, appropriating and then have it physically go there, because we've had issues where money has been appropriated, allocated, and then we've seen it switch, mishandled or misappropriated again by different stakeholders. But if you have that money taken in the right direction, in other words, if we have it taken in the way it's supposed to be and how it's supposed to go, definitely I believe we can have it. We can have it. It's very impactful. Oil is one of the biggest. If you've been in position to have if you've been in position to look at the Albertine region and the kind of development that is, going around there, I've been in position to look at the stadium, Oima Stadium that is coming out right there, and there's so many other developments, the Kingfisher, that there are so many projects that are being developed, most especially around the area where the crude, where the pipeline is going to be very beneficial. So if you're in a position to stick to it and get the right kind of angle, I think we can be in a position to get out of the money, because
yeah, you've actually said there are many other developments, and that brings us to the other priorities for this budget or the financial year of 2026 and 2027. There is gold, and then the quantification for iron ore, gold, copper deposits, and development of a refinery for the ongoing construction of the standard gauge railway. This was said by the ministry. So they have other priorities, I believe, are investing in what we have as the mineral resources. This is something you've actually always talked about. You always say that we do not actually think of what the things we actually do have, of how to make them bring us money. So now they're drawing their focus there, and that is actually increasing the budget by a tremendous amount, because from an estimate of 69.4 to 78.2, that is quite a trillion shillings. That is very, very, very huge.
Yeah, but again, if you look at the standard gauge railway is one of the issues that is being so much prioritized here. It is not a sustainable project. It is one of the projects that's going to give us a lot of what? It's going to put us into the deficit, because if you really want to understand how it is operating and the impact of the project, look at what's happening in Kenya. Kenya put in a lot of money in the standard gauge railway, and what do they have? Actually, the Kenyans are demonstrating, because there are some projects that there's what you call infrastructure inflation. Infrastructure inflation is when you put a lot of money in infrastructure development that cannot help a country and in a given period of time. You just look at the Uganda airline. It's one of the unserious investment the government has gotten involved in. For so many years, the government is funding in, and the money that is being put there, it is misappropriated. That's why you've been in position to have someone else, come in, an Ethiopian, to come and run our national carrier. But of course, going back to the standard gauge railway, the SGR, if Kenya has been, because the Kenyan part is done. We are supposed to have it at the East African level, and the Kenyan part is done. If the Kenyan part has been in a position to be dealt with, what are the Kenyans saying about it? Nothing. Now the point is, you don't put a standard gauge rail line when you don't have what's going to sell. What are Ugandans going to export? What are we going to take? Because I'll give you an example. The Bombardier goes empty, not only because it doesn't have customers or passengers, but we don't take anything outside because we've not been in position to develop. You don't just have an infrastructure that's going to be useless. You develop what we call supply chains, and supply chains are developed. Okay, if you're saying that maybe you have the gold, can we really take that gold? Because Uganda has been in position to establish something like a little bit minimal refineries that are not at global level, world market standards, but they're operational and they are doing something in there. So if you're talking about the construction of the standard gauge railway, we should be in position to look at what Kenya is doing. Kenya has put it up, but they are not using it for anything. So what are Ugandans going to take? Because the fact is, yes, we've been in position to get so much into agriculture, but look at that budget.
What are the things we can actually export, in case we have it finished?
You first put things to export before you put up what you're going to use to export.
What do you think us as Ugandans in our country, what do we have? What do we have to offer?
We have food, but the question is here. Look how much money, look on the budget, how much has been allocated to agriculture. Negligible. It's not even 10%. So if you have almost a population of almost 85% of Ugandans are farmers. Most of them are doing it at subsistence level. You understand? Which we used to do, which so many countries used to do in the 70s and the 60s, but we're still running it at subsistence level. So if you have a population that is so much engaging in agriculture at that level, so what you do, you first of all commercialize it. If you have commercialized agriculture, that's when you're in the position to establish what we call the standard gauge line. Let the Kenyans feed on our food, because what do they have? They have posho and skuma wheat. That's what the Kenyans are feeding on. So, and surprisingly, Kenyans are feeding Ugandan market with agricultural products, irrespectiveness of their fake climate. So the point is, yes, the standard gauge line is cool, but what are we going to take as a nation? Like we've said, the Bombardier and the national carrier goes empty, not only with the passengers, but we also don't have any cargo that we can be in position to put. So if you're saying that the budget is focusing on infrastructure development and the standard gauge line is one of the priorities, that's no business. Then we don't have business there, because at the end of the day, we don't have what to take. So you first come and empower the people. You first come and empower the people. I wish the government can be in a position to capitalize on the parish development model. You don't develop commercial supply chains by giving people 1 million. What are they going to supply? I mean, what can 1 million do to establish what you call supply chains? Because supply chains, they are the only things that can help you to understand or to sustain what you call, to come up with what you call market sustainability. We have Chinese here. In their country, they are 1.5 billion, right? But what can we feed them on? What can we supply? We can't supply them with anything. That's why they come here and take our soil, I mean our sand from Rwanda, because we cannot have anything that we can get them supplied. Why? Because we don't have it sustainably. All what we have is, you know, sometimes you grow and you sell the excess. That is subsistence approach. So you're going in for a multi-billion-dollar project, but cannot make money because you don't put the standard gauge line. Kenya is already regretting. They're already regretting.
So actually, before we head back to Kenya, the ministry also said they are relocating, or they are planning to develop a national planning strategy, which is aimed at strengthening the planning function across the government. And as part of the reforms, they are dedicating shillings 200 million that is going to be allocated to each planning unit in different ministries. Then over shillings 100 million to each agency and local government planning unit. So this is intended to support a research-based planning, staff training, equipping of planning units, and facilitation of program-based planning and budgeting. This was said by the Ministry of Finance. This is, you already say you want research to be worked on. So if they are relocating, okay, I believe it is a lesser amount because 100 million shillings, 100 million. But this, they are relocating 200 to different ministries, then 100 to the local governments for research, maybe for majorly for things like research, staff training, and then planning of units. Don't we see that they at least are getting a broader, do we see a broader view? But then let's also, another thing, let's also head back to the fact that this budget is fully funded by revenue. How sustainable
not fully,
is this?
60%.
It's not fully, 60%?
Yeah.
Oh, thank you for that.
And that is also very questionable.
It's also
yeah.
So how sustainable is this kind of funding? How on increased revenue? Because I believe revenue is going to, if it's not already high, it's already increased. So how sustainable is the funding and of the 60%, just like you corrected? And then its allocation, them being a broader to these new planning reforms, like they've said, the planning strategy.
Yeah, first we have to look at the kind of research that you've talked about. Uganda has been in position to come up with the Vision 2040. So we're like, okay, what kind of planning are we talking about? Because we have already Vision 2040. Can we be in position to revisit it? Because if you've been in position to establish, because we have what we call the National Planning Authority, you know, that was in position to develop what we call the Vision 2040. Actually, we shouldn't be coming up with the kind of painkiller approaches if you're in a position to understand what Vision 2040 represents. In other words, why are we doing planning again? Are we doing planning to emphasize that we planned or what? Because if Uganda was in a position to design a trajectory that we would like to take up the nation by designing what we call Vision 2040, we should be in a position to develop programs according to what the direction, because the plan is what gives us a direction as a nation. That is what should define the kind of infrastructure that we want. It's because of the Vision 2040 that we should also be in position to define the kind of curriculum that we need to teach our students. I mean, our school-going students. I mean, as students within the nation. So if we have a plan already, Vision 2040, then why again allocate money for planning? I feel like that's a little bit of double jeopardy. Why would you do something like that? So which kind of planning? Two, we should be in a position to empower people. Why don't you give that research to maybe Makerere University Business School? They should be in a position to give it to that. You know, because at the end of the day, you have almost so many students who are not doing anything in Uganda. So why don't you give that project to to one of the universities to be in a position to get something like that done? Two, if the biggest challenge with Uganda is empowering people such that our population can be impactful. Because we have almost so many people that are outside the money economy. They're outside the money economy because they don't have anything that they can answer. So if you're in a position to plan as a nation, and we already have a plan of Vision 2040, is Vision 2040 now questionable? Are we still moving by that vision? Did it change? Are we going to be planning each and every month, each and every year, each and every political term? So these are some of the questions that we need to look at, and they should be in a position to guide our kind of investment as a nation. So if you're saying that maybe, okay, we are going by the Vision 2040, okay, my question is the standard gauge rail line part of the Vision 2040? Two, is the East African crude oil operation part of Vision 2040? You understand? So these are the questions that we must do. That's why people plan long term. But because our political kind of everything turns out to be politicized, and now that maybe you come up with a plan when you are pro-America, now that you're no longer pro-America, you're pro-Russia, so your plan changes. So we change goalposts in order to so much fulfill our demands as pre-required by our so-called funders or business people in that very angle. So a nation like that is a danger to itself.
Your nation is a danger to itself.
Yeah.
Okay, let's
because
move away from...
if you can't plan for 10 years, then why? Because Vision 2040 is known. We read that document almost, was it 10 years ago, 5 years ago? It was. So are we still moving by that?
I'll make analysis. I'll make a research about it and see whether we are still in alignment. But away from Uganda, just like you actually mentioned Kenya, and our next story is moving on. We are going to be heading to Kenya. Kenya received their first doses of Lenacapavir. They received them on the 17th of February, and by 26th February, they were already injecting people in Kenya with Lenacapavir, this new pre-exposure prophylaxis for HIV/AIDS. This new prophylaxis is something you inject. It's injectable only twice a year. So you inject it. Let me see the first dose you get it once. Then after 6 months you get the second dose. So as we were talking about Uganda receiving, started because we also received ours. I believe just last week. We talked about Uganda is going to start a distribution this March, but then Kenya already started by the 26th, towards the end of February. They're already injecting their people, and then Kenya has an approximation of over 1.3 million citizens or civilians that have HIV/AIDS, or that are surviving with it, or that are living with it. So for Kenya to accept this, because in our discussion we talked about why Ugandans are getting it first and all that, or being among the first few countries that have been noted down to receive these first few doses, just like Kenya is receiving the first 21,000 doses. It received them on the 17th, and then it is going to receive more, and then the United States government is also helping out. Just like it said it's going to be helping out with Uganda, it's also going to be helping out in Kenya to send more doses, or to support with the facilitation or the funding, so that these are able to contain or to retain the people that have already received these doses. So doctor, so initially, Kenya, when they had the thing of signing the health agreement and all, Kenya was very vocal. They said, why are we giving information about our people? And Kenya refused, and Uganda really agreed very fast. But then if we are seeing Kenya already putting Lenacapavir into action, does this show it's already authentic? Because according to clinical trials, we've seen it is effective by 99.9%. That is almost 100. Like, that means it is, you can't beat it. Like, we've not seen, we've been told. The clinical trials?
Yeah, we've been told. When you say we've seen, it's like you're part of the people that carried out the tests. We've been told. Am I right if I say something like that?
You're not wrong technically, but since they carried them out on Ugandans, and so then we've been told. We've been told by our trusted National Drugs and our Ministry of Health that we trust as Ugandans. So I believe it is very efficient by the 99.9%. So doctor, the major thing is, do we see Lenacapavir reshaping or restructuring HIV prevention across Africa? Because last time, Kenya, you know, the fact that it was just Uganda, we were like, you know, Uganda just, you know, takes in all of this. But the fact that this is Kenya, and Kenya was very vocal previously, but now Kenya is already administering, injecting its people with Lenny Kapaville. That means, do we see this being authentic?
What?
And okay, so do we also see it restructuring, okay, the prevention of HIV across Africa? Honestly, do we see HIV in the next maybe 10 years being something that's no longer a threat to people?
No, the issue to do with the HIV, it should go back to personal, to go back to individuals. If you think that HIV is going to be away in 2030, I think you should just you know, so much continue using the ABC strategy that we are taught about, the abstinence, be faithful, and use what you're supposed to use, you know, when things get tough on you. The issue of, you know, eradicating AIDS totally, it's a very big lie. It's a very big lie. We all understand the business side of it. People don't just make their business go away, because HIV now it's a business. The AIDS industry is one of the most thriving businesses that the different pharmaceutical companies have been involved, have been in position to come up with, you know, since 1950s. You know, HIV became a very, very serious issue in 1985 when they called the Bangaro conference in was it Central African Republic? Yes, I think in 1985. And then Uganda stands out as one of the biggest countries where so many of these drugs have been tested. Yes, we are not so much about that, but what do you expect from Kenya? Kenya is an extension of the American influence, and this is an American project. Remember, they were in position, we were in a position to sign an agreement with all the 5 East African countries. They first signed the contract with Kenya, sorry, not a contract, some kind of MOU with Kenya, then they came to Uganda, Rwanda, and most of these countries. We've had issues that we've had to deal with, you know, different. And the point is, the American policies, American government is no longer coming in as a joint body, what we used to call USAID, United States Agency for International Development, because it got disbanded. They disbanded. Now they are coming in as a state. So they prefer to deal with individual states. So that's why they're in a position to bring all East African countries and make them part of this kind of a deal. But the biggest question is, do African governments really test and take in full heart to ensure that all what our citizens, our people get, you know, is that real? Because you don't launch that on a national scale and then you bring your citizenry at that angle, and then we test it and launch it. Most especially when there were issues, because in Kenya Kenya was so vocal of all the companies where this program was brought. Kenya was, you know,
exactly.
very,
that's
very
why
high.
When they gave in, I was like, maybe this is actually very authentic.
So why did they give in? Maybe there was some other politics that was in position to go behind. Why did they give in?
Maybe it's actually real. It helps, you know, for their people.
And maybe we are dealing with people's lives. When you say maybe, that means maybe. So why do you trust something like that? But the biggest question is about the effects that we've been in position to have as Africans on the different projects that have been tested. Now, we had issues with the Moderna. We had issues with Johnson & Johnson. We had issues with AstraZeneca. And Western companies and Western states have been in position to come up with so many issues about this. Australia was in position to ban everything to do with Johnson & Johnson and Moderna. These are some of the vaccinations that we're in position to have, or the vaccines that we're in position to have during the COVID-19 program. They've had adverse effects in the West. Canada has had a lot of issues with it. Australia has had a lot of issues. America has had a lot of issues with it. So why do we have any African country that has been in position to come up with a study about Moderna, about AstraZeneca, about Johnson & Johnson? Most of these pharmaceutical projects that were so much injected into the bloods of African people. Did we have something like that? So if you're not being in position to deal with something like that, why do you launch something new? And have you had your scientists? Do you have a credible scientist that can be in position to study that, and they give you something that is very real and authentic? Because the whole of the state is to protect their people. But of course, such projects they come with a lot of money, they come with a lot of backup, they come with a lot of finances, they come with a lot of strings attached. If someone is in position to ask for the details of the patients in that specific country, and has that clause been dealt out with, like, do we have something about to do with it? Has it been removed? So if someone comes, you don't give all your personal life secrets. Even we are not even allowed to do it at a personal level.
And we didn't give in the secret. Okay, maybe for Ugandans, but for Kenya particularly, they did not. And then you've talked about the testing. You see that way we have a National Drugs Authority that authenticated this new drug or the prophylaxis. We also, even in Kenya, the ministry also authenticated it. So the way you see, they didn't just say, we've brought this and you just take it in. No, the National Drugs Authority worked upon that.
In Kenya?
No, here. Okay. But then for Kenya, they've also done that through the National AIDS and STI Control Program. The Ministry of Health said they are going to implement a phased evidence-driven rollout guided by the trends and the health system readiness. So just like they've said, and then the phase 1 is going to be delivered in March, and then there are more drugs. So there are more drugs coming in, and by April they're expecting more 12,000 doses. Then the United States government is also providing 25,000 doses. So I believe that different organizations that are in charge of drugs in the different countries, in the particular countries, have authenticated this. That's according to the Ministry of Health. So basically that is it.
Yeah, we have so many wars that are being fought. When people talk about war, in most cases, people want to see Iran fighting America. But one of the biggest battles, one of the biggest fronts that the world has been in position to go in is what we call bio wars. And these are pharmaceutical projects that are being so much disseminated on people. And Africa has been one of the biggest testing ground for this. So I'm not against the project, but I'm asking some questions that have not been answered. Maybe I'm so behind as far as this kind of development is concerned. These are some of frontiers that people use, and actually one of the issues as to why we shall talk about the Khamenei, the Ayatollah in Iran. One of the ways they were in a position to so much bring him down, it was a position of having access to his DNA. When someone has access to your DNA, they can use it for anything. And this is what the Kenyans parliamentarians were fighting against. In Uganda, of course, it made some noise for quite some time. Maybe they didn't so much. We are so busy with voting and all that. But these are some of the issues that the government should be in a position to come up and protect their own people. Most especially when you had issues rolled out, everyone is talking about Moderna, everyone is talking about Johnson, everyone is talking about AstraZeneca, and the Western powers, the very countries that produced these, are having questions about them. So if we're still having issues with all that, then why roll out something new? I think we should be in a position to have a guided direction. We are not undermining the responsibility of the NDA, but as Africa, now that it was in Uganda, now it's Kenya, of course, Rwanda, it's going to go. We should be in a position to have some. What's the role of this African community in this case? Are they just about opening borders and what? They should. Oh my God.
Yes, that is it for Lenaka people in Kenya. The major thing here is we hope they actually are able to sustain the distribution of this drug, because they have limited they have quite a limited number of doses. But the fact that it's only injectable twice a year, that means maybe they could be able to sustain it with the different fundings they are receiving from the different health organizations and different very bigger countries or economies. We shall be heading for a short commercial break and return with more stories and the health tips.